Sorry to keep you waiting.
Nintendo's next-generation console is on the horizon, and looking back, this most recent Switch generation has been incredible for reviving old franchises and breathing new life into classic Nintendo games from the past. From Metroid having a huge comeback, to games like Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door getting gorgeous remakes, there have been so many fan-favorite franchises and games that finally got another chance on the Switch. And while not all of them have ended up being as good as some of us would have hoped, I still love seeing Nintendo using their huge library of IP like this. But I'm a Nintendo fan, so I'm never satisfied. And today I'm going over some more Nintendo franchises that I think deserve another shot on whatever the next system ends up being. I was originally going to wait for the console to actually be announced to make this video, but I want to talk about this before the next console's hype cycle starts and new games start getting announced left and right. Some quick rules: I'm defining a franchise as a series that has 2 or more games, and it also needs to be a series that at the very least never got a new entry during the Switch generation. Sorry ARMS, maybe next time. I know a lot of these franchises get thrown around constantly when talking about potential new game announcements, but I tried my best to genuinely engage with these series while making this video. Now let's get into it. First up, we need a new Earthbound game. No, I'm just kidding. This is going to be a serious list with only games that actually have a slight chance at coming back. Very serious, okay? So, number 1. Nintendogs. Nintendogs is a series that's pretty heavily associated with the dual-screen functionality of the DS and 3DS, but I think a new entry could totally work with just one screen. I'm guessing the next system will at least still have a touchscreen, so you could still get the dog petting experience in handheld mode. And I think some light motion controls in docked mode could work pretty well too. These games are the definition of simple, casual fun, and it seems like it would be pretty hard to mess up a new entry. Cats were already added in the last one, so maybe this time we could get some fish or birds. I think it's totally possible for Nintendo to appeal to both their more hardcore audience and the casual crowd at the same time, and a new Nintendogs game would be the perfect way to get more casual players interested in a new console. There's also the possibility of Nintendogs becoming an app on phones, which while that wouldn't be as exciting to me personally, it would be a pretty good fit. Just please no microtransactions. But either way, I just want some cute new digital pets that I'll eventually end up forgetting about. Pilotwings' focus on chill flight simulation is something I really enjoy, and I'd love to see a new one with shiny graphics and more fantastic music. In North America, all 3 Pilotwings games have been launch titles for their consoles, and I think it's because this type of gameplay is perfect for showing off a system's impressive new level of graphical power. While it might not be a system seller, a new Pilotwings game at launch for the system could be really great if paired with a bigger game like 3D Mario or something. I mean, I'd buy a new system just for Pilotwings, but I'm weird like that. The core gameplay loop of this series is strong enough for another entry, but there's also a lot of room for innovation. It would be really cool to see a return to some light story elements like the original had. I loved the high stakes of the final rescue mission. This is also like my last chance at ever seeing Woohoo Island again, so there's that too. Alright, I know I said this was going to be a serious list, but I genuinely think F-Zero has a real shot at coming back now. Some of you might consider F-Zero 99 to already be the big comeback for the franchise, but I'm talking about a full new 3D entry in the style of X and GX. This series has kind of become the go-to example of Nintendo fans asking for stuff to come back just for the sake of it, but after playing through all of these games myself last year, turns out they're actually really great and I would be incredibly excited for a new one. F-Zero's gameplay is entirely different and unique when compared to Mario Kart, and its high-octane racing deserves another chance. F-Zero's gameplay is a perfect fit for online matches with tons of players, as 99 has already proven, so I hope the buzz around that game was enough to convince Nintendo to give this franchise another shot. There are very few Nintendo games that are as intense, punishing, and rewarding as F-Zero, so I'd love to see it make a grand return on the next system. When talking about big comebacks for dormant Nintendo IPs, Kid Icarus Uprising is the perfect example. But now it's been 12 years since the incredible 3DS entry, and I think it would be a waste to let this franchise go dormant once again. Sakurai has said he doesn't have much interest in making a direct sequel, but I think he laid the groundwork so perfectly that someone else could follow in his footsteps while staying true to what Uprising was going for. That game's controls are held back a lot by the 3DS, so getting a new entry with full dual-stick controls would be amazing. Honestly, I'd be satisfied with just an HD remaster at this point. But I also think this version of Greek mythology still has a ton of potential for interesting new stories and epic moments. Uprising has such a fantastic atmosphere that's unlike anything else Nintendo has done before, with memorable characters that I could listen to all day long. Whether it's just a port or a full new entry, Kid Icarus is a franchise that needs to be experienced by more people. One of my personal favorites from this whole list, Rhythm Heaven has got to come back someday. The combination of satisfying rhythm gameplay and strange visuals is endlessly replayable, and it's a perfect fit for a hybrid console. For a video game music-obsessed guy like myself, a game that requires you to engage with the soundtrack in such an intense way is super fun and enjoyable. The Switch somehow ended up getting 2 WarioWare games, which is awesome, but I think it's about time for Rhythm Heaven to have its moment in the spotlight again. Megamix was a great compilation of old and new rhythm games, but I would love to get another entry that's full of brand new content. Rhythm Heaven has endless potential for creativity, and the community has shown how much they love this series with constant fan projects and indies inspired by it. I really missed this series during the Switch's lifespan and hope it comes back on the next system. Out of all the franchises on this list, Donkey Kong is easily the one that's most likely to have a comeback sometime very soon. Between the DK-themed expansion to Super Nintendo World and his presence in the Mario movie, Nintendo obviously recognizes his importance, and it's only a matter of time before we get a new video game. And I can't wait, as Donkey Kong has some of the best platformers out there. The interesting question to me is what type of Donkey Kong game it will be. Is it going to be another 2D entry in the Donkey Kong Country series, or maybe something totally different like a second shot at a 3D platformer? I'd be really excited for either one, but I think a 3D platformer would be the best way to get a lot more attention on the game and make it feel like something totally new. It seems like DK64 has kind of a mixed reception overall, so there's obviously a lot of room for improvement. Or maybe we'll get a chill life sim game where you play as Donkey Kong owning and running his own tropical bar on DK Island, serving Nintendo characters who vacation there. Whatever it ends up being, I can't wait to see Donkey Kong make his grand return. Punch-Out kind of already had its big comeback moment with its Wii entry, but it's been nearly 15 years since that game was released. Learning your opponent's attack patterns so you can dodge and weave through their punches and strike back at the right time is an endlessly fun gameplay loop. A new Punch-Out game with updated graphics and even more fighters to box against would be so great. And now that Nintendo owns Next Level Games, I'm hoping it will be one of their next big projects. This studio excels at character animations especially, which is exactly what makes this series so endearing. The core fighting formula of this series has been so consistently fun ever since its first entry on the NES, and I think it could come back better and stronger than ever on the next console. I've talked about why we need another Tomodachi Life game a lot in the past, so I'll keep this one pretty short. This series is full of some of the most bizarre moments in Nintendo history, and watching the Miis you've created do all these strange things is extremely entertaining. The unusual gameplay of Tomodachi Life is definitely different enough from Animal Crossing to not crowd the life sim genre, and the huge fan demand online will hopefully push Nintendo into finally making another one or doing an upgraded port of the 3DS game. I've thought this one was pretty likely for a while now, but it's been so long that I'm starting to doubt it'll ever actually happen. Miis aren't even the stars of Wii Sports anymore, so Tomodachi Life is their last chance to be in the spotlight. I'm actually not super familiar with the Star Fox series myself, but I've played enough to know that I want Fox McCloud to get another chance. Star Fox Zero was a pretty recent release in the grand scheme of things, but this franchise deserves a big new game that isn't burdened by trying to prove the worth of the gamepad. Whether it's a fresh new take on the 64 style or something entirely different like Star Fox Adventures, I just want to see this IP finally start expanding and living up to its true potential. This series started as an impressive technical showcase of the power of the SNES, and I think it could still be an effective way to impress us with the scale and spectacle of this world. R-Wings are just too iconic of a design to leave behind, and seeing one zoom on screen suddenly during a future Nintendo Direct would be an amazing moment. F-Zero isn't the only racing franchise that Nintendo hasn't used for a while, as Wave Race hasn't gotten a new game since 2001. This series has racing gameplay that manages to feel unique when compared to both Mario Kart and F-Zero, as speeding across waves feels more chaotic and unpredictable. The main thing I love about these games are the vibes, and I kind of miss the era of gaming when water graphics were the #1 way to impress people. There's a greater emphasis on tricking and staying in control of your jet ski, which makes learning the game's systems really fun. Wave Race feels kind of similar to the 1080 snowboarding games to me, which should also come back. But my bias towards tropical atmospheres means I like this series just a bit more. And hey, Wave Race Blue Storm made a small appearance in Pikmin 4, so someone at the company remembers this series fondly. So far, the longest dormant franchises I've talked about have been ones that go back to the GameCube, but StarTropics hasn't had a new game since 1994 on the NES. I haven't played the sequel, but the original is genuinely one of my favorite NES games, and I think it has huge potential for a really interesting revival. Obviously, hoping for this series to make a comeback is a bit of a long shot, but I would be one of the 10 people freaking out if this ever actually happened. I think The Tourist is a pretty good example of how this formula could work in the modern day, and it would be fascinating to see how Nintendo would bring it back to life. It would probably have to be something along the lines of a full reboot. I'd say the chances of this one are probably less than 1%, but that won't stop me from screaming StarTropics the next time I see a palm tree during a reveal trailer. I'm not sure if Wario Land is considered its own franchise separate from WarioWare, but I think it's different enough to include it. Wario's 2D platformers are even heavier feeling than Donkey Kong's, and they're full of interesting gimmicks and unique moments. There's been a couple big indie games like Pizza Tower and Anton Blast that are inspired by Wario Land games, so it's clear that people still have a desire for this formula. There's also Wario World on the GameCube, but I'm guessing a new game would be 2D in the style of Shake It on the Wii. I think it could be cool if Waluigi gets involved as a separate playable character. He could have a totally different moveset leading to different types of level design. And last but not least, there's Golden Sun. Now I'm pretty far out of my depth with this one, as I've only played a few hours of the first game. But it would feel wrong not to include it, as I see it brought up a lot when talking about franchise revivals. It seems like the most recent game, Dark Dawn on the DS, has a somewhat mixed reception, so I'm not sure if it's more likely to be a full new entry or an Advance Wars style remake of the first two. It's clear that people have a lot of love and respect for this series, so I'm interested in knowing if people actually want a new game or if the original games are strong enough to stand on their own without any follow-ups. I don't think we can ever have too many high-quality RPGs like this, but I'm also not familiar enough with the series yet to hope for a new entry myself. And those are the Nintendo franchises that I think deserve a comeback. Obviously, I'm hoping a lot of these will be revived on whatever the next generation console ends up being, but I will wait as long as it takes for StarTropics to get a glorious new game. Of course, there's a whole bunch of franchises I didn't mention. There's stuff like Chibi Robo, Custom Robo, Sin and Punishment, Pushmo, or ones where the developers went bankrupt like Mario and Luigi or the Dylan's Rolling Western series. I was also going to talk about how long it's been since the last new 2D Zelda game, but Zelda felt like too big of a franchise to fit in with the rest of this list. But I would love a new original 2D Zelda adventure someday. I kind of struggled with the script for this video as it felt like I was just repeating stuff that's been said 1,000 times before, so hopefully I was still able to make it interesting. Oh, and if any of these actually end up coming back, it's because I'm secretly a high-profile leaker with a ton of insider knowledge.